People say they can't hear me.
Ľudia hovoria, že ma nepočujú.
From someone called... Okay, good. So everyone's okay now. I receive a broad range of
Dostal
questions
som
from people.
viacero otázok od ľudí.
Okay, it's on the Bible forum. Tom posted on the Bible forum.
1 second, everybody.
Ešte chvíľočku.
I deleted it.
The link.
Terry. I will delete them all.
Okay, let me forward it. Can you forward it to her?
You can do it direct? Okay. Someone wanted just to get onto the group, so that we're just arranging that. I get a wide range
Dostal
of
som viacero
questions,
otázok.
and sometimes it's not that easy to decide
Nie je to také
which questions
jednoduché,
to
na ktorú
address and which
odpovedať,
not
na
to
ktorú
address.
nie. Sa
I still have a
rozhodnúť.
few questions
Mám ešte pár nezodpovedaných otázok.
But I wanted to address in a very brief way a question that comes
Ale
up
chcel som v
often.
stručnosti zodpovedať na otázku, ktorá je tu často.
And the question
Je
is about
to
relationships, but
o
it's not
vzťahoch.
particularly about husbands and wives, although it's
Nie je to
connected to that
priamo o mužoch a
subject.
ženách, ale je to s tým prepojené.
So before I even address the
Takže
question
predtým, ako
itself,
môžem vôbec odpovedať na tú samotnú
I'm not
otázku,
sure how many of us have
nie som
watched,
si istý,
I guess it depends where you're
Závisí.
located. Elder Tess's
koľký z
second
vás
presentation
ste
today.
sledovali
She did her regular Sabbath
sobotnú
presentation.
prezentáciu od staršej Tess.
Australian time it would have been, I think, 9:30, and then she did the
A
second
potom tú
presentation,
druhú.
which was an international
Jedna bola
one.
sobotná prezentácia, jedna bola medzinárodná.
And that particular presentation, she
V tejto
was
prezentácii
reviewing material
sa
that she has
zaoberala
discussed.
materiálom, ktorý
in
sme
the past,
rozoberali v
recent
minulosti.
And if I were just to use
Keby
the
som to mal
title,
nazvať
The Apis Bull,
Big
I'm hoping
Apis,
most people here would be familiar with what I'm referring
tak by ste
to.
vedeli, o čom hovorím.
And of course, if you watch
Ale tá
today's
dnešná prednáška
presentation, then you know exactly what I'm
sa
referring
toho
to.
týkala. Viete, čo mám na mysli, ak ste to
So
videli.
the reason why I
Dôvod, prečo
mention
to
that
spomínam,
is because it's
je,
connected to
že je to prepojené s
question
touto otázkou,
that
ktorú sa
someone has
niekto
asked.
pýta.
When I say someone has asked, they ask
Pýtajú sa
specifically,
špecificky,
but as I say, I do get this question
ako som hovoril, túto otázku
quite often.
dostávam dosť často.
So, the reason why I've referenced you back to the Apis
Dôvod,
Bull
prečo som
study,
odpovedal naspäť na štúdiu Bika Apis,
I'm sure many of you have
som si istý, že
at
mnohí
least
z
done
vás
some preliminary
spravili si
investigation
aspoň nejaké také,
on the Apis
nejakú
Bull.
štúdiu toho Bika
We would
Apis.
normally call it the
My
golden
to
calf,
nazývame zlaté tela.
and what it refers to
Čo to
and how
symbolizovalo,
it impacted
aký to
God's
malo dopad
people.
na Boží ľud.
Elder Tess has done a really good job
Staršia
in
Tess
explaining the
bola veľmi
effects
dobrá v tom,
of
ako vysvetlila tie dopady
and how they had
modlárstva.
picked up that mindset from the
A
Egyptians
ako si oni zobrali toto
and what they
myslenie od
would do
Egypťanov
was explain God through a visual phenomena. We would call it
oni
an idol.
vlastne začali si Boha vysvetľovať
So that's
cez
not
modlu,
such
cez,
an
nejaký
unusual
cez
thing
niečo
to do.
vizuálne.
And
Ako
as she
povedala,
said, paraphrasing
A
from
keď
Ellen White,
parafrazujem Ellen Whiteovú,
after the Egyptian captivity, so that was point 1, where they essentially picked up the habit or the idea of making
oni
idols
zobrali
that
si ten zvyk toho
represented
tvorenia
their
tých
God,
modiel.
and that was all, good
To
and
bolo
well. That
dobré.
was all fine. I mean, the logic and the understanding, not the
Tá logika
experience, of course.
toho.
By the time you get to the
A
Babylonian
kým prišli do
captivity,
babylonského zajatia,
centuries later, Israel, God's people, are going to
Boží
rise
ľud,
up.
ako
They're going
Izrael,
to understand that idolatry really is the bane of their
pochopil, že práve to
experience.
modlárstvo je
And if we
dôvodom
were
tejto
to
ich
go
skúsenosti.
to Isaiah 46, a chapter that
My
I
sme
have,
už veľakrát rozoberali Izaiáša
I
46.
particularly have addressed
Ja
many
som
times
mnohokrát o tom
now,
hovoril
and I've addressed it from
z inej
different perspectives.
perspektívy.
The reason why we tend to go to Isaiah 46 is because of verse 10,
Je to Izaiáš
which is a
46:10.
study of
Je
the
to
beginning and the
štúdia
end,
o začiatku a konci,
Alpha and
alfa a
Omega,
omega, línii na
line upon
líniu.
line, Isaiah 28. Now, the reason why that is a
Dôvod,
really nice
prečo je to
chapter
naozaj
to
pekná
study
kapitola na štúdiu,
is because it gives a
je, že nám
reference
to
point,
dáva taký
and the reference point that it gives,
bod, na ktorý
is,
sa môžeme odvolať.
as you
Ako
all
viete,
know, this is the book
toto
of
je kniha
Isaiah. So
Izaiáša.
to understand the reference point, the context, you need to
Keď
know
chceme
when
rozumieť kontextu,
Isaiah's ministry
potrebujeme
is
vedieť, kedy
occurring.
sa deje tá
And if I were
Izaiášova
to say,
služobnosť.
without going to the verses itself, because he tells you himself, just to name two kings, Hezekiah
Tak
and
vymenujem len
Manasseh.
dvoch kráľov,
So if we were to consider those two kings, Hezekiah and Manasseh,
Ezechiáš
you
a
would know
Manases.
that in classic movement
Keby som to povedal takým tým
language,
klasickým
that
jazykom
this would
hnutia,
be the 723
to je
era.
obdobie
This
723,
would be when the
kedy
10
tých
tribes, Ephraim,
10
Israel, become
kmeňov Izrael
so engrossed in their idolatry, they get destroyed by the Assyrians.
boli
So
zničení
I think we're all
Asýrčanmi.
familiar with that history. You all know about the 2520. This is the history of
To sú
Isaiah.
dejiny Izaiáša.
So Isaiah 46
Izaiáš
is a time
46
period that is before what we would call the Babylonian
je pred
captivity.
babylonským zajatím.
And in this history,
V týchto
what God is
dejinách
going
to,
to
čo Boh
do
spraví,
is he's going to compare the
je, že
experience of
porovnajú
God's people
skúsenosť Božieho ľudu
today,
dnes,
which is today for them, obviously, pre-Babylonian captivity,
je to zajatie
and
pred
he's going to
Babylonom,
compare that with a
teda
time
pred
period
babylonským
centuries
zajatím, to
before.
obdobie.
And I'm going to argue it's the time period before the
A
Exodus.
obdobie pred exodom.
And in
V jedných
one
dejinách
history, they
žijú
live
v
in
Egypte
Egypt,
a v
and in
druhých
another
dejinách
history,
žijú v
they live in
Izraeli.
Israel. But the experience
Ale tá
is the
skúsenosť je
same.
rovnaká.
And that's the
O to tu
point
ide.
I'm suggesting of
Toto je
Isaiah
pointa Izaiáša
46.
46.
As Isaiah is going to compare these
Izaiáš
two
porovnáva
histories.
tieto dve
And
dejiny.
essentially he's going to tell you that there is
A
no
vlastne
difference
nám povie, že
between
medzi
the
nimi
two.
nie je rozdiel.
What he then goes on to
Potom sa tam
explain
ďalej vysvetľuje,
is how God brought his people out of this
ako Boh vyviedol
idolatrous
svojich
mindset
ľudí
or out
von
of Egypt,
z
if we
toho
can
modlárstva.
equate the two. They're going to come out of Egypt, literally, and they're going to come out of this Egyptian
Vyjde z toho
mindset.
egyptského myslenia.
That was what
To
was
bola Božia
God's
vôľa.
will. And we know that was
Vieme,
his
že to
will
bola jeho vôľa,
because at the golden calf
pretože tá
experience,
skúsenosť zlatého
when
telaťa,
they fall into that sin and Moses discovers it,
keď
this is why
padli
he
do
is
toho
so
hriechu,
harsh in his punishment, because they should
Oni už
already
mali
have
vedieť,
known the
tú
dynamics
dynamiku
or the
a
context or
kontext
the will of
Božej
God
vôle.
with respect to,
A Mojžišov trest bol
now
veľmi
we'll switch
prísny.
over to the Apis bull terminology. They should have already known that. And Isaiah 46 speaks not only comparing the two,
nielen
but how
porovnáva tie
God
dve,
relieves them
ale aj to,
from
ako
that
ich Boh
idolatry,
vedie z
pulls them
toho
out of
otroctva.
idolatry in the Egyptian experience, and then he's going to
Potom
compare that
porovnáva tie
history
dejiny
with the history of the
s dejinami po
Babylonian
babylonskom zajatí.
captivity. And if you're all familiar with
Poznáte
that
túto
study,
štúdiu,
at least the way I've approached it
to ako
in the
som k tomu
past,
pristupoval v minulosti,
is that he will compare the ministry of
porovnáte
Moses
služobnosť
and the ministry
Mojžiša a
of
Círa.
Cyrus. And it's a
Je
direct
to
compare and
priame
contrast between
porovnanie a
the two.
kontrast medzi tými dvoma.
But not only does he compare and
Ale nie
contrast
len
the two,
porovnanie a kontrast
as
medzi
they
tými
do
dvoma,
two things, those two ministers, those two men, they pull God's people out of
títo dvaja
captivity
muži
and
vyťahnú
they
Boží ľud zo
also
zajatia,
destroy the captor.
ale vlastne zničili aj tých
So
zajacov.
they destroy the captor and they bring God's people
Zničili
out of
zajaca a
captivity.
vyviedli
They have
Boží ľud zo zajatia.
a twofold
Čiže majú
role.
dvojitú úlohu,
That's Moses and
ako
Cyrus.
Mojžiš a Cyrus.
But before
Predtým,
that
ako sa to stalo,
happens, Isaiah gives the backdrop of this
Izaiáš dáva
idolatry.
taký,
And I'm sure you're all familiar with it. If you're even now
sa vyjadruje
looking
k
at
tomu modlárstvu.
the first few verses of Isaiah 46, talks about Bel and
Určite
Nebo,
poznáte tie
etc.
prvé dva verše z Izaiáša 46 o Bálovi a Nebovi.
This issue of idolatry is a
Táto vec
significant one.
modlárstva je veľmi významná.
So what I
To, čo
want
by
to
som chcel
suggest
navrhnúť,
is that
je, že
Isaiah
Izaiáš
46,
46,
compare and contrast it to the Egyptian experience,
porovnanie a protiklad
that the thing that they were suffering
s
with
tou
then,
skúsenosťou
Apis
egyptskou,
bull, golden calf, is the same thing that they're suffering
to,
with
či ho
now.
trpeli vtedy, trpia aj teraz.
They're in captivity,
Vtedy
literally
boli
in
doslovne v
Egypt,
zajati v Egypte,
in the
dejinách
history of Moses,
Mojžiša.
as we all know. And Isaiah's
A
going to compare
Izaiáš
and
to dáva do
contrast
porovnania
that
protikladu
to
s
the
dejinami,
history that is the
ktoré
pre-Babylonian
sú
exile.
vlastne pred Babylonom.
And this is the book of Isaiah, remember? And as I've already
Ako som
mentioned,
hovoril,
the book of Isaiah is in the
pred
history
odchodom z
that
Babylonu.
just precedes the captivity or the destruction of the 10 tribes by Assyria,
Izaiáš
and also the history just
vidí
post
ten
that.
čas toho
hoping
zničenia
that we're all
tých
familiar with
10 kmeňov Asýriou,
So,
aj ten čas potom.
when he compares and contrasts these two
On dáva do
histories,
porovnania tieto dve dejiny,
Isaiah's going to use the terms Bel and
používa
Nebo.
tam pojmy Bál a Nebo.
Elder Tess is going to
Staršia
refer
Tess
to
bude
the
hovoriť
Apis
o tom
bull.
bykovi
And we
Apis.
have to take all of that dynamic and
Všetko
bring it
túto
into the
dynamiku musíme
history
priviesť do dejín starovekého Izraela. Predtým, ako boli
pre-Babylonian
vzatí do
captivity.
zajatia.
So I'm hoping we can all
Takže nie v zajati, ale predtým, ako
understand what
boli
I've
vzatí do
just
zajatia.
laid out. So if I can get a couple of people just to assent to that you understand what it is that
Niektorí ľudia
I've
píšu, že
just
chápu, čo mám na
described,
mysli, čo
what
som
I've laid
povedal.
out. So as you're having a
Keď
chance
budete
to
mať
respond,
možnosť
I'm just going to just really simply draw that out.
odpovedať, ja to zatiaľ nakreslím. Tak jednoducho.
So we
Takže
have a
máme
line
líniu
and we have
a máme
two
dve
histories.
dejiny.
I'm going to call it
Názvem to
the
alfa
alpha
a omega.
and the omega history. The first and the
Prvý a
last.
posledný.
And this is Isaiah 46.
Izaiáš
Verse
46:10.
So I'm just going to call this
Toto nazvem
Egypt,
Egypt
and I'm going to call this
a toto
Babylon.
Babylon.
Now, in Isaiah 46, they're not in
Izaiášovi
Babylon,
46 nie sú v Babylone,
but he's going to refer back to a history when they are
ale
in Egypt. So I just want to see. I want
sa
to
to
see
odvoláva na tie dejiny, keď
So
boli v Egypte.
here, they're into
Tuto sú v
idolatry.
modlárstve,
And here, they're
aj tu
also
sú v
in
modlárstve.
idolatry. And at the end of that
Na konci
idolatrous
tejto modlárskej
experience,
skúsenosti
Moses
príde
is gonna
Mojžiš
come. And at the end of
a na
this
konci
experience,
tejto
the
skúsenosti
captivity,
príde
Cyrus is gonna
Cyrus.
come. So, the reason why I
Dôvod, prečo to
mention that
spomínam,
is because Elder Tess
je
has
kvôli tomu,
laid
že
out
staršia
clearly
Tess jasne
who
predložila,
Apis
kto bol
was or what he
Vík
represented.
Apis,
And she's quite clearly, explicitly stated
dosť
that
jasne
this was a
vyjasnila, že
warrior
to bol
god, a
Boh
warrior
bojovník.
king. And you can understand
Môžete
why
porozumieť,
in this
prečo v
history
týchto
here,
dejinách tu
when it refers to the Omega
hovorí
history,
o Omega dejinách
why God's people would be interested in
a
a
prečo
warrior
Boží
God.
ľud by mal záujem o takého bojovného
Because
Boha.
obviously this is the time period of the
Samozrejme je to
captivity
čas
by the Assyrians
zajatia
and
Asýrčanmi
tribes,
a
and then
potom
into the Babylonian
Babylončanmi.
captivity. And
A
what
to, čo
you need is
potrebujeme,
a God that
je
can
Boha,
protect
ktorý
you.
nás ochráni.
So I'm
Dúfam,
hoping
že
you can
vidíte
see the comparison between
toto
the two
porovnanie medzi
histories.
tými dejinami.
So when the Israelites
Keď Izraeliti
created the
utvorili
Apis
toho
bull
Víka Apis
and they wanted this God to lead them
a
back into
chceli,
Egypt,
aby ich Boh
not only were
priviedol
they
naspäť
going
do
to give this
Egypta,
bull as an offering back to Egyptians, but it was also a God that would be able to protect them.
z Egypta, mal to byť Boh, ktorý by ich chránil.
Now, I'm sure
Som si
Elder Tess
istý, že
has
staršia
mentioned
Tess to
this,
spomínala,
but I'm not sure if
ale nie
this
som
has
si
been the
istý, či
focus
toto
of
je
her
zameranie,
attention when she
ktoré
has
mi
done a study on the Apis bull.
ktoré ona robila v tom
Because
štúdiu.
another aspect
Ešte je
of
tu aj
this
druhý
bull
aspekt tohto
is
býka.
that not only is it if I call
On
it
nie
a
je
god
iba
of
Bohom
war,
vojny,
a god of
Bohom
power,
sily,
a god of strength,
ale
but it's
taktiež
also a
je
god
to
of
Boh
fertility.
plodnosti.
It's also associated with
A je spojený
creation,
vlastne
or the creator
s
God.
stvorením. Je to
Let's say
Boh
it that way.
tvorca, stvoriteľ.
So it has
Takže má
two
dva aspekty.
aspects. Not only is it the god
Nielen,
of,
že je to
I'm going to call it the god
Boh
of
vojny,
war, warrior god,
bojovný,
but it's also a god
ale je
of
to tiež aj
fertility,
Boh
a god of creation. Now, I want to focus on this second
plodnosti,
aspect
stvorenia.
of what the
Chcem
Apis
sa
bull
zamerať na ten druhý
represents.
aspekt toho,
It's
čo
this
ten
god of fertility. Now,
Boh
if you go
plodnosti znamená.
we'll go to the
Keď pôjdeme
Bible
najprv do
first,
Biblie,
and we would be in Exodus chapter 32,
boli by sme v Exodu 32
and we'll begin with verse 4.
a začneme vo verši 4.
Exodus 32, verse
Exodus
4.
32, 4.
Now, we're going to start by seeing one aspect of this God.
Začneme vidieť jeden aspekt tohto Boha.
Exodus
Takže
32,
Exodus
verse 4.
32, 4.
This is speaking
Tu
about
sa hovorí o
Aaron.
Áronovi.
And he,
Áron,
Aaron, received them at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool. And when it
Nestihla
says
som.
he received them at their hand, this is their
Takže
jewelry
zobral tie ich
that is
šperky z
brought
ich
to
rúk
view in verse 3. So all the people broke off
a
their
ľudia si
earrings
zložili
between their ears
šperky,
and brought them unto Aaron.
náušnice.
So they all give to him their jewelry. Verse 4, he receives them
Vzal to
at
z
their
ich ruky a
hand
s formou
and
storidlom
fashioned it
spravil
with a
z toho
graving
zliate
tool.
tela.
After he had made it
Potom
a
ako to
golden
spravil,
calf,
povedali:
And they said,
Toto sú tvoji
These be
bohovia
thy gods,
Izraelu,
O
ktorí ťa
Israel,
vyviedli hore z
which brought
egyptskej
thee
zeme.
up out of the land of Egypt. So, 2 points
Chcem,
I want to
aby sme
see.
videli dve veci.
First of all, it's
Sú
gods
tu
in the
bohovia v
plural.
množnom čísle.
So there are these gods that have brought them
Bohovia
out of
vyviedli,
Egypt,
nie
not a
jeden boh.
singular god, not just
Nie len
the
to zlaté
apis
tela,
bull
ten
god,
boh,
singular, but
ale
this is
sú to
gods in
bohovia, množné
plural.
číslo.
And
A to
the second
druhé, čo
point I
chcem,
want
aby
us
sme
to see
videli,
is that it's
je,
these gods
že sú
that
to
brought them
títo
out of
bohovia,
the
ktorí
land
ich
of
vyviedli z
Egypt.
Egypta.
So I just want to see if I can
Pozriem
find
sa,
another
či
reference.
nájdem
If I can't,
ďalšiu odvolávku na to.
I'll skip over it. I won't be long. If I can't find it, I'll skip the point I want to make.
Ak to nenájdem, tak to preskočím.
So, I want to drop back. If you keep your hands in Exodus 32, I think we are. Go back to Exodus
Poďte ešte do
14.
Exodu 14, nechajte si
I want
prst
to
v
go back
Exodu
to Exodus
32.
14.
Poďte do Exodu 14.
Give you a moment to find it. So, Exodus 14, we'll probably read the next one as well. This is Numbers 33.
A budeme čítať aj Númery 33.
So, I've got Exodus
Takže Exodus
14
14
and I've got Numbers
a Númery
33.
33.
I'll give you the verses in a moment. Exodus 14, Numbers 33. So, we'll go to Exodus
Dobre,
14, and I'm in
Exodus
verse 8.
14, 8.
Exodus 14, verse 8.
A Hospodin
And the
zatvrdil
Lord
srdce
hardened the heart
Faraóna,
of
kráľa
Pharaoh, king of
Egypťanov,
Egypt,
a honil
and
synov
he pursued
Izraelových.
after the children of Israel.
Ale synovia
And the children
Izraelovi
of Israel
ťahli von
went
súd
out with a
zvedený
high
vysokou
hand.
rukou.
Now, if we were doing a
Robili sme
study,
štúdiu,
maybe even someone might want to answer this, what would be
keby
the
sme
most
robili, ktoré
important
by bolo
word
najdôležitejšie
in this
slovo
verse?
v tomto verši?
Now, if you've heard me ask
Ak
those
si ma
questions
počuli už
before,
sa pýtať
you
tieto
know that
otázky,
you have to modify that rule, William
to je,
Miller's
viete,
rule,
že to úprava
and perhaps someone
pravidla
can
Williama
actually
Millera.
tell us what that rule is. Not just to say every word must have its proper
Nie len
bearing
povedať,
upon
že
the
každé
subject,
slovo má to svoje,
but thank
svoj
you,
význam.
someone's found it. But it's not. I don't use
Ja
that
to
rule
pravidlo
that way,
takto
and I don't
nepoužívam,
recommend people
ani vám to
use that
takto
rule just to say
neodporúčam
every word
používať.
must have its proper bearing. Bearing means direction
To, že má
or
to slovo
importance.
svoj
I want to
význam,
say,
to znamená, že
in
má
any
smer a
particular
dôležitosť.
study, in any particular passage,
Čiže v
there is a
každej
word
pasáži je
that
slovo,
gives
ktoré
bearing or
nesie
direction
ten svoj
to
smer a
the
význam
subject matter at
ohľadne danej
hand.
témy.
So in this verse,
Takže v tomto
what
verši,
is the
ktoré je to
important
dôležité
word?
slovo?
The word that has the most bearing. What do
Čo
we
si
think
myslíte?
in Exodus 14:8?
Exodus
Does
14:8.
anybody have a thought? So, good. I'm going to go with. We'll go with Brother Leon's high hand.
Že
I don't
boli
want it.
vedení,
It's not the word hand. I'm going to suggest it's
boli
the word
vedení vysokou
high,
rukou.
not hand. But you can put them together. So I don't want to
To slovo
nitpick
vysokou,
on that. It's the
tá vysoká
high
ruka.
hand. So if you go to I think I said Numbers
Keď pôjdete do
33.
númery
This is
33,
Numbers 33,
tretí
verse
verš.
3. Numbers 33, verse 3. And they departed from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover.
Númery
The children of
33:3.
Israel went out with an high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. So it is hand, but I want us to see that it's going to reinforce this understanding of hand with a high hand. So what would a high hand be as opposed to just a
Tu sa
hand?
tiež píše, že
What would
vyšli
people say
synovia
that a
Izraelovi
hand is?
vysokou rukou pred očami všetkých
So as you give me
Egypťanov.
your answers, I'm going to read
Takže aký
verse
by bol
4 to
rozdiel
you.
medzi
For the
vysokou
Egyptians
rukou
buried
a
all
len
their
rukou?
firstborn, which the Lord had
Prečítam
smitten
vám ešte
among
4.
them.
verš.
Upon
Egypťania
their
vtedy
gods
pochovávali tých,
also
ktorí
the
pobil
Lord
Hospodin medzi
executed
nimi. Všetkých
judgment.
prvorodených, aj
So
na
what
ich
is this
bohov
high
vykonal Hospodin
hand?
súdy.
Good, power.
Vysoká
We'll
ruka
go with
znamená
power
moc,
or
sila.
mighty. So it's not just a
Nie
hand,
je to
it's
iba
a high
ako
hand,
tak,
which means a
hociaká
really
ruka. Je to
powerful
mocná ruka,
hand.
vysoká.
Now, in the context
V
of
kontexte
killing people and
zabíjania
destroying their
ľudí a
gods,
zabíjania ich
we all know
bohov,
what a high
vieme,
hand
čo
is.
to je tá
What kind of a
vysoká
God
ruka.
can do
Aký boh
that?
to môže
What
spraviť?
kind of a God can have a high hand? Would it be a soft, meek
Bol by to
God,
taký mierny
or would it be
boh,
a
alebo bol by
warrior
to
God?
bojovný boh?
So we all
Vieme na
know
to
the answer
odpoveď.
to that. Obviously, a warrior
Bol to
God,
boh,
an
bojovník.
almighty warrior God. Good. So when you go back to Exodus 32,
Keď
when
sa
Exodus
vrátime naspäť
32,
do Exodu 34,
Aaron
Áron
says to them,
hovorí,
"These be
že
thy
toto sú
gods of
tvoji
Israel, which
bohovia,
brought thee
ktorí
up
ťa
out of the
vyviedli z
land of
Egypta."
Egypt." So I hope we
Dúfam,
can
že
see
to
that,
vidíte,
that the way you bring
že to,
out
ako
people from
vyviedol ľudí z
Egypt
Egypta, je
is
ako.
how. So, who's asked that? I'm going to try to
Skúsim
slow down.
spomaliť.
I've got the name. Aaron says,
Áron
the
povedal,
Apis bull, is Apis bull singular or
že to
plural?
je apis bík.
By the way.
Bis apis. Je to jednotné alebo
Singular,
množné
good.
číslo?
But he doesn't say that. He
ale
says
on to
God.
nepovie, on povie, že sú to bohovia.
So I want us to keep that
A
in the
toto
back
chceme,
of
aby
our
ste si
mind.
všimli.
We may not get to that.
Možno
this
tento
week.
týždeň sa k tomu ešte
So I
nedostaneme,
want us to keep that
ale
in the
chcem,
back
aby
of our
ste si to
mind.
nechali v
He says
mysli.
gods, but an Apis bull is a singular
On hovorí
God.
o bohoch, ale bík
So
apis je jeden boh.
it's these gods,
Takže
Apis
tento
bull,
boh,
which brought
bík
thee up
apis,
out of the
bol
land of
vyvedený z
Egypt.
Egypta.
And how
Ako to
did he
spravil?
do that? If you go to Exodus
Keď
14,
pôjdeme do Exodu
Numbers
14,
33. He did
urobil
that
to
good
vysokou
with a
rukou.
high hand, with
silou,
force, with
mocou.
power. So just want
Chcem,
us
aby
to
sme
be
si boli
sure
istí,
that this whole
že celá
idea
táto
about the
myšlienka
Apis
toho
bull that Elder
bíka
Tess has
apis,
been explaining to
ktorá
us
nám bola vysvetľovaná,
is
je správna.
correct. You can show it straight from inspiration that it's a God of
Je
force,
to boh
a
sily,
warrior
boh
God, a God that has power,
moci,
that
ktorý
is
má moc,
able to do
ktorý
this
toto
work
pre
for
nich
them.
môže spraviť.
Verse 5. And when Aaron
Keď to
saw
Áron
it,
uvidel,
he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow is a feast to
povedal,
the
zajtra
Lord."
spravíme sviatok, zajtra je
A
sviatok
feast to God.
Hospodinovi.
Now, this God is who?
Takže
Which
tento
God
boh
is
je
this?
kto?
It's not
To
the
nie je
Egyptian
egyptský boh.
God. It's not the God
To nie je bík
Apis.
apis,
This
to je
is
Jahve.
Jehovah.
To je
It's the
skutočný
true
Boh.
God. But it's now going to be represented
Teraz
in
bude
the best way that they
reprezentovaný
can, because they want to honor
najlepším
him.
možným spôsobom.
And the way
To,
they're
ako
going
to
to do
spravia,
that is through creating a
je,
deity
že
or an
vytvoria
image,
božstvo alebo obraz,
which has to be the Apis bull, the warrior god. But I've already said that Apis
bík alebo Apis,
has two
boh Apis,
connotations.
má dve
It's
vlastnosti.
this
Je to boh
warrior god,
bojovník
and we can call it
a je
the
to boh
creator god
stvoriteľ,
or the
ktorý
god of
je boh plodnosti.
fertility. Verse
6.
6.
verš.
And they rose up early on the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. So it's which word stroke phrase
Čiže čítame
is
druhú
the
Mojžišovu
most
32.
important
Čítal 6. verš,
in
nestihla som to.
verse 6.
Ako vstali ráno, obetovali zápaly a doviedli pokojné obeti a ľud sadol, aby jedol a pil a vstali, aby sa hrali.
Who wants to venture a guess or hopefully an educated guess? We're in verse 6, Exodus 32, verse 6. What is the key word, most important word, Miller's rule
Podľa Millerovho pravidla
1 in this
tejto
passage?
pasáži.
Okay, so I'm going to go with
Hrali.
play.
Vstali, aby sa hrali.
So a couple of people got that. Brother Tom, Sister Anna, Sister Justina. It's the word play. I want to go with the word
Vstali, aby
play.
sa hrali.
So
To slovo hrali.
hold your fingers in Exodus 32
Nechajte si
verse
svoj
6.
prst tu.
And let's now go
Poďme
to
do Genesis.
Genesis. We're going to go to the book of Genesis. So I'll type this one out so we can, it's there for us. Genesis 26,
Genesis 26,
verse
8.
8. Genesis 26, 8.
Genesis 26, 8.
Hopefully I've given you the right one. Yes, it's the right verse. So I'm going to give people a moment to read it themselves.
Nechám vám čas, aby ste si to mohli prečítať.
We're in
Ja to
Genesis
prečítam po
26,
slovensky.
8.
A stalo
I'm
sa,
going
keď
to
tam
ask
už
the
býval
same
nejaký
question.
čas, že
Tell me
Abimelech
what,
král Filištínov
using
vyzeral
Miller's
z
rule number
obloka a
1,
videl
what is
Ahla.
the key word
Izák sa
here?
poihrával s
I
Rebekou,
changed the
svojou
key word.
ženou.
It's the most
Skúste mi
important word.
povedať,
What is
aké je
the,
kľúčové slovo,
which word has
to
bearing
najdôležitejšie
upon
slovo
the subject that we're
tejto
discussing?
téme, o ktorej sa my bavíme.
Okay, good. Everybody can see that really easily. Excellent. Now, what you need to
Takže,
do is you need to go back to
keď sa
the
pôjdete
Hebrew
pozrieť
to connect the
do
words. But in fact, you
hebrejčiny,
didn't, because you can all, I don't know how many people just, everyone's getting sporting, which is the correct word. Now, if you go back to the Hebrew, this is
takže slovo
H,
poihrával sa je
6, 7, 1, 1. I'll type that in.
v
6, 7,
hebrejčine
1,
ten
1.
kód je to
And
6711.
it's the same
Je to
Hebrew
isté
word
hebrejské
for play
slovo,
and for sporting.
ktoré nachádzame
It's the
aj
same word.
pri Bíkovi Apis, že sa
Now,
hrali.
if you look at the word
Keď sa
itself,
pozrieme
it's a pretty
na to
benign
slovo
word.
samé o sebe,
Nothing evil
to
or
slovo
bad
v sebe
about it.
nenesie nič zlé, žiadny
But it has
zlý
a certain
podtón.
context, just like many words do, depending upon
Ale
the
to slovo má
situation.
mení svoje významy
So,
vo svojom
if this was
kontexte,
the
tak ako aj
Olympics,
iné slova.
you could use this word. If you went to a
Keby
comedy
ste išli
show,
na
you
nejakú
could use this
komédiu,
word
tak sa
You
toto
can use
slovo dá
this word
použiť. Tam sa zabavíte, je tam
as
sranda.
sports, an Olympian,
Môžete toto
Olympiad.
slovo použiť
You could
ako
do
na
it
šport,
at
keď
a-
niekto
a
športuje,
comedy
keď
show.
je
You can see
proste na
children
pohyb.
playing
Takisto, keď sa
around
hrajú deti
in the back garden, just
v záhrade,
doing childish things, riding a
to
bicycle.
slovo má význam
this
v
word for
slove,
that
slove
too.
ako vo význame hra,
But if you go to
šport,
Genesis 26 verse
ale tu
8,
v Genesis 26.8,
what word is this? What word
aké
would
to je
you
slovo? Čím by ste to
substitute
nahradili?
for sporting?
Čo tam
Good, we got that really quick.
Čo tam má byť?
Well done, Sister Victoria. You were fast. Flirting. That's exactly the word I was
Flirtovanie.
thinking of. So, we're going to change the word
Takže
sporting
zmeníme
to
teraz to, že sa
flirting.
poihrával, náš
And it came to
flirtoval.
pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the
Takže Abimelech,
Philistines,
král
looked
Filištínov,
out at a window
sa pozrel
and
z
saw,
okna
behold,
a videl
Isaac, that's
Izáka s
the person
Rebekou,
who's been there
ako
a
sa s
long
ňou
time,
poihráva.
was flirting
Alebo flirtuje.
with Rebecca, his
so svojou
what?
ženou.
Rebecca his what? What's the word? Not wife. Rebecca his what? Who can give the correct answer? Good. Rebecca his sister. This is where problems begin, because you can play badminton or some kind of sport with your
Môžete
sister.
športovať
There's
so
no
svojou
problem with that,
sestrou,
is there? Of course there
pretože
isn't.
on povedal
Why does
Abimelechovi,
Abimelech,
že Rebeka je jeho sestra. Tak športovať, hrať
depending
badminton
what
so
we want to
svojou
say, get
sestrou
upset,
môžete.
get suspicious, begin to think something's gone funny when
Ale
Isaac is sporting or playing
toto
sport
bolo niečo
with
iné.
his
Toto není,
sister
že on sa s
Rebecca.
ňou hral nejakú hru na
It's
šport.
because that sport that
Ale
he's
toto,
playing
čo on
there,
robil s
in the words
Rebekou,
of Sister Victoria, is what?
bolo čo?
Flirting. He's flirting with his sister.
Flirtoval s ňou. Sexuálne sa
And
hral.
everybody knows
A to
it's
sa so
wrong to
sestrou
do that.
nerobí.
So Abimelech says, how comes he's
A
flirting with
Abimelech
his
hovorí, jak je
sister?
to
This
možné,
does
že sa
not
to
seem
deje?
correct. And of course,
To
what's
sa,
the problem?
a čom je problém?
Because she's
Pretože
not
ona
his
bola jeho
sister,
ženou, ona nebola jeho
it's his
sestrou.
wife. And it's perfectly
A s manželkou
acceptable
je
to
to
flirt with your wife.
absolútne priateľné.
Now, as I say, this word can be
Toto
used
slovo môže byť použité
in
rôznymi
different
spôsobmi.
ways. So you have to be able to
Musíte
get the
vedieť pochopiť
context.
ten kontext.
Now, I've
Ja
given
som
you
vám
the
dal
context
kontext,
in Genesis 26 verse 8. It's clear to see that's what that context is.
kde je to jasné vidieť.
Now, when you pull that word in its context in Exodus 32 verse 6,
No a
'cause
teraz
now
sa
we're going back
vrátime
to
do
Exodus
Exodu
32 verse 6,
32:6.
now it says they're going to
Tu sa
eat and
píše,
drink and they're going to
že
raise up
povstali,
to play.
aby
They're not
sa
going to rise
hrali.
up to play
Čo,
a game of
začali hrať
football
futbal?
or badminton or
Alebo
volleyball or
volejbal?
something, or some kind of
Oni
sport. What are they
nešportovali,
rising up
oni
to do?
povstali, aby čo?
Good. We'll go with the naughty stuff. Someone says they're gonna go up and they do the naughty
Boli
stuff.
necudní.
Okay, so I like it says do the deed, flirt, naughty stuff, and Brother Emmanuel just says sex.
Niekto toto napísal rovno, že
So
pohlavný
we'll
styk,
go with any one of those four: sex, the naughty
Niekto
stuff, do
napísal
the deed, flirt, to know each
necudnosti.
other. Good. So whether or not they actually have intimacy, I'm sure some of them
Či
did.
áno alebo nie,
The
prišlo
whole
k úplnému
Scenario
styku s niektorými
is
určite
a
áno,
sexually
ale
provocative
toto,
experience.
čo sa tu dialo,
Now, why are they doing that?
sexuálne
Is it just because
provokatívne
they sat down
veci.
to eat and they had some drink,
Čo,
and we
vypili
might
si,
infer that this was an alcoholic
či
drink?
to už môžeme o tom
that
potom
they got drunk.
komunikovať, či vypili alkohol,
It's not. It doesn't explicitly
tak sa
say
to
that.
presne nepíše.
Why would they
Prečo?
end up
Prečo
flirting with
začali
each
medzi
other?
sebou flirtovať a
So
sexuálne sa
we've
správať?
already explained the reason,
Toto všetko má
because
svoj dôvod.
this is not a sexual orgy. That's why I want us to be clear on this. This is not a
Toto
sexual
nie sú
orgy.
sexuálne
This
orgie.
is an act of
Toto je
worship.
úkon uctievania,
And many people are, in the chat are all saying the same thing. It's the
pretože
god
je
of
to
fertility,
bohom
the
plodnosti.
Apis bull, and what it means. It's
To
part of the
bolo
idolatrous
súčasťou modlárskeho
worship system.
uctievania.
It's what they learned from
To sa
Egypt.
naučili v
The god of
Egypte.
fertility. Good. These are this is what I
Toto
want
chcem,
us
aby
to
sme
see.
videli.
They're not getting into this
Oni
intimacy with one
nevchádzajú spolu
another.
do nejakej intimity.
There's no regard for familial relationships. These are not husband and
Len
wives.
preto, lebo
These are not just
manžel s manželkou niečo chceli mať.
married
Toto-
people. These are single people. There's no thought of human
Tu nejde o
relationships.
žiadne ľudské vzťahy.
All they're doing
To, čo tu
is
ide,
following the rules
je,
of
že
worship.
vlastne uctievajú
That's what I
spôsobom,
want us
ktorým
all
sa
to
uctievalo
see.
v tej dobe.
So when we were in verse 4, this was
Keď sme vo
Apis,
verši 4,
the
to
god of
bol
war. I'm going to call it the god of war.
Apis.
That may not be a technically accurate term. The god with a high hand, And
Je
by the time you get
to
to
Boh,
verse
ktorý
6,
vyviedol
it's
vysokou
the God
rukou,
of fertility.
ale on je aj Boh plodnosti.
The God who brings about
Je to Boh, ktorý prináša
creation.
život, stvorenie.
Someone says that the SDA church teaches it's an orgy. Now, I don't want to make
Cirkev vraj
it look
učí, že sú to
or sound
orgie. Ja nechcem, aby
ugly.
sme sa na to pozerali z tejto
I'm
zlej
not saying that it
strany.
isn't. I
Chcem,
want
aby
us to
sme
understand
chápali
it in its, if we can say its historical context,
to
if we
v tom
can use that kind
historickom
of
kontexte.
phraseology. This is an
Toto bol
acceptable
historicky
service.
priateľná
This is
služba
okay
Bohu.
to do
Takto ľudia uctievali
because
Boha.
you're not going out and just playing around with your neighbour's wife or your neighbour's
Toto nie je
husband. You're not
teraz
married
o
and
tom, že máte
visiting
niečo
a single
s
woman.
manželkou vášho suseda.
What we're seeing here is part of
Toto
a
je
ritual
normálny
service. It's
rituál,
completely
ktorý bol
acceptable.
priateľný v tej dobe.
And at the end of all this, everyone would
A
go
na
back to
konci sa
normal
všetci
life.
vrátia k
if you
normálnemu
like.
životu,
If we
ku
can say it
svojim
that way.
manželom a manželkám.
The next day, the woman that you may have flirted with, you can't do that same thing with her
Na
in the
druhý deň,
marketplace.
žena, s ktorou ste flirtovali, by ste
The
sa aj
man that you
nemohli
slept
takto
with,
dotknúť
perhaps,
niekde na
during
trhu.
this
Toto bolo
service,
vyslovene
a week later, you wouldn't
náboženský
go and
úkon,
sleep with them.
služba
It would be totally respectable
Bohu.
behavior,
a bolo to
normal behavior.
priateľné, normálne.
This is a worship service, and I want us to
Chcem, aby
be
nám
clear
toto
on
bolo
that.
jasné.
If you're okay with that. So I don't want to trash this or
Nechcem to
trivialize it,
nejako trivializovať,
hopefully this doesn't trouble you. I don't want to
ani
demonize
tých ľudí
the
nejako
people.
demonizovať.
They don't have a choice but to do this. If you're going to follow
Ak
Apis,
oni
this
chceli
is how
uctievať
you do
toho
it.
Apisa, takto sa to robilo.
It's clear. If we were to go to, if you all went on a holiday
Keby
to the
ste
Middle
išli
East, or
na
say
Stredný
to
východ,
Turkey
niekde
or
na
somewhere like that,
dovolenku,
and you wanted to go, or
napríklad do
Jerusalem,
Turecka,
and you wanted to
do
go to a
Jeruzalema,
mosque,
pôjdete do mešity,
just to visit that as a tourist
ako
resort,
turista,
then you know that you would be
viete, že
expected
by
to
ste
follow some
museli
rules.
splniť
One of
určité
the things that they
pravidlá.
would ask you to do
Museli
would
by
be
ste
to
si
take your
vyzúť
shoes off,
topánky,
that's clear, and you'd probably have to
prikryť
cover
si
your
hlavu.
head. And you would do that
Urobíte
because
to.
you know
Lebo viete,
that's normal
že
operating
toto je proste
in that
proces,
environment.
ktorý sa vykonáva v tomto
And whilst I
prostredí.
don't want to trivialize what they're doing, I also
Nechcem
don't
to
want
ani
to demonize
trivializovať,
it.
ale ani to
So I'm saying
demonizovať.
it's
Je
part
to
and
proste
parcel of the
súčasťou
worship service.
uctievania
If we can all hold on to those
tohto
two
byka
thoughts.
Apis.
So it's particularly the
A
second one that they rise up to
to, že oni
play,
povstali a hrali sa,
that this is connected to
je to, čo sa
fertility
spája s plodnosťou.
and creation. So if we've got all those thoughts in
Keď
our
všetky tieto
mind,
myšlienky teraz už máme, chcem
I
ísť
want to
ďalej.
move on. So you remember in verse
Pamätajte,
4
že vo
that
4.
it
verši
says,
sa píše, to
"These
sú
be
tvoji
thy
bohovia,
gods, O Israel,
Izraelu,
which
ktorí
brought thee
ťa
up out of
vyviedli
the land of Egypt."
z
Why does
Egypta.
it go from
Prečo
a
to
singular
ide
god, Apis,
z jedného
to
boha Apisu
many
k
gods?
mnohým bohom?
Why does it go from
Prečo
a
najprv
singular
jednotné číslo a
to
potom množné?
plural? So I want to just
O tomto by som
address
chcel
this.
hovoriť.
Now, addressing this is not
A toto
so
nie je
straightforward.
také jasné alebo
It's a
jednoduché.
bit
Je to trošku
esoteric,
ezoterické.
but it is correct
Ale je to
and
pravda
true.
a je to správne.
So before I
Predtým, ako
explain
to
that,
vysvetlím,
so
niekto
someone has said this is the
hovorí, že toto
mystery
je to tajomné
religion,
náboženstvo.
and I'm going to go with that mystery. I'm going to go with that concept
Dobre,
of
pôjdeme s
mystery
týmto
religion.
konceptom.
This is Brother Richard that said this is
Hovorí
the
brat
mystery
Richard.
religion. Now, if you want to
Ak sa
hold
chcete
to that
držať tejto
idea,
myšlienky
the mystery
tajomného
religion,
náboženstva,
what I
to, čo
want
chcem
to
povedať,
say, perhaps
možno
not
nie
today,
dnes,
but in
ale na
maybe the
ďalšej
next presentation,
prezentácii,
if we don't finish, because I don't think we're going to
neviem,
finish
kedy
this
dokončím
thought,
túto myšlienku,
is
je to,
what is this
že čo
mystery
to vlastne je.
religion that I'm not asking Brother Richard
Nepýtam sa teraz brata
specifically, but I
Richarda.
think you all know what he means. What is this mystery religion?
Ako
How
to
does it
funguje?
operate? And how evil or bad
Aké to je
is it?
zlé?
So the reason I'm going to explain this perhaps in a
Vysvetlím
different
to
way. I'm not going to use the
inak.
word mystery religion moving forward. I'm going to use a different
Použijem inú
phrase
frázu,
later on, but I just want to go
ale
with
začneme
this.
tu.
So now we've switched to paganism.
Teraz
So the
ideme k
reason why
pohanstvu.
so you don't have to give any more guesses.
Nemusíte hádať.
The reason why this is
Dôvod, prečo toto
important
je dôležité,
is because if I were to
je,
ask
že keby som
you,
sa spýtal vás,
do you participate?
účastníte sa
Have you bought into the mystery
toho
religion
tajomného
or
náboženstva,
paganism, which is
pohanstva?
the terminology that
To je terminológia,
Brother Richard has given?
ktorú nám dal brat
Have we
Richard.
bought into this? Do we
Začali sme my
practice
s týmto,
this type
praktikujeme
of
to,
religion, the mystery
takéto
religion,
náboženstvo,
the paganism religion,
to náboženstvo
or
tajomné,
nature
to je
worship?
uctievanie prírody alebo pohanstvo.
So all three terms have been given by Brother
To
Richard.
sú pojmy,
Nature
ktoré tomu
worship,
môžeme dať,
mystery
ktoré nám tu
religion,
brat
paganism.
Richard dáva.
Have we bought into that? We,
Robíme
this
to my
movement,
ako naše
Adventists
hnutie
in the
alebo ako
21st
adventisti?
century.
Padli
And
sme do toho?
what I'm going to
To, čo
say
ja poviem,
is, unfortunately, I don't
že
think
na
Elder Tess has
nešťastie
brought us out of this in 2014.
si myslím,
Elder Tess wasn't here in
že staršia Tess
2014
nás
for
tohto
one
nevyťahla v
thing.
2014. Za prvé, ona tu vtedy
So
nebola.
what I want to
To, čo
say
chcem povedať
is
je,
that we
že my
believe we may be
veríme,
free
že sme možno
from
slobodní
the mystery
z tohto
religion.
náboženstva tajomného,
But I want to
ale
suggest
chcel by som
that the mystery
povedať, že
religion
toto
is alive and well
náboženstvo
in
je
Adventism,
nažive v adventizme,
and
toto
it's also
tajomné
alive and well in the
náboženstve
hearts and
a
minds
tiež aj v srdciach a
of
mysliach
members in this movement.
ľudí, ktorí sú členmi
To what
tohto
degree?
hnutia.
Everyone has to figure out for themselves.
To, do akej
To what
miery, to si musí už
extent,
každý zodpovedať
I want
sám,
to say it's
ale
widespread.
je to široko rozšírené.
So, let's just summarize some thoughts,
Poďme
some points
teda
that we've
zhrnúť
made.
nejaké myšlienky.
This is the Apis bull,
Toto je byť
Apis
Apis,
God.
Boh
This God has two
Apis má dve
representations.
reprezentácie.
One of
Jedna
them
z nich
is war.
je boj a
He
vojna,
has a strong, mighty
má
hand.
silnú ruku,
And the
a
other
tá
one
druhá
is the God that
to je
creates, or the God
Boh
of fertility.
plodnosti, ktorý tvorí.
This God is one
Toto je
person,
jedna
the
osoba
calf.
a to je ten
But
bík.
even though it's a singular
Aj
entity,
keď je ako jeden,
it represents God
on
in the
vlastne
plural.
reprezentuje Bohov v množnom čísle.
So, if I can say it this
Ak to
way,
môžem povedať takto,
you've all heard maybe you have not all heard the term. It's an English term,
je
at
to
least in
taký
the
anglický
UK.
pojem, neviem, či to poznáte.
You get when you go
Keď idete
shopping.
na nákup,
Often they do you these special
tak
deals,
dostanete
and
také
they
tie
say you
zľavy,
get two for the price of one.
že
And you've
môžete
all heard
dostať
that
dve za cenu
expression when you
jedného.
come to shopping.
Neviem, či
You
to
get two for the
poznáte.
price of one. They don't say half price.
Nepovedia
They
vám,
don't call it
že
half
je to za
price.
polovičnú cenu.
In fact, they don't let you buy the thing for half
To
price.
to
What they
nechcú.
want you to do is buy two of them.
Oni nechcú, aby ste si kúpili
Which
niečo
is
za
obviously a marketing
polovičnú
technique.
cenu, oni chcú, aby ste si kúpili dva
So
kusy.
they say two,
Takže
for
oni
the price
povedia
of
dve za
one.
cenu jedného.
and that's what I want to suggest you're going
A
to
to je
get
to,
with
čo
Apis.
dostanete pri bíkovi Apis.
You're going to get two
Dostanete
gods
dvoch bodov
for the price
za
of
cenu
one
jedného.
god. So the one god is
Ten
Apis,
jeden je
and you're going to get a second god
Apis
attached
a vy
to
ešte
this
dostanete
god.
druhého, ktorý je k nemu pripojený.
So,
Takže
I think I've summarized
myslím si, že som
all that we've got to so
toto
far.
zhrnul, zatiaľ kam sme sa my
And
dostali.
I've asked what kind of experience this, or what kind
Pýtal
of
som sa
religion
na
this
to,
is,
že
and
aké je
someone
toto
said this is the
náboženstvo,
mystery religion, paganism, nature
aká je to
worship,
skúsenosť.
and then I asked the question,
Pýtal som sa
are
otázku,
we still
že či aj
engrossed
my
in this
stále
religious
sme v tomto
practice
ešte zamotaní
of
tejto
the Apis
praktike
bull?
náboženskej.
And if you were to just follow on through Elder Tess's
Ak len pôjdete cez tie
presentation,
prezentácie staršej
I
test,
think you'd all say, sure, yes.
myslím, že by ste všetci povedali, áno,
But I want to be
jasné.
quite specific about at
Ale
least the
chcem, aby
point
sme
I
boli v
want to
tomto
bring up from all
špecifickí.
of this. So, I want to ask a specific question.
Chcem sa spýtať
I need to check
špecifickú otázku.
something first.
Ale niečo chcem ešte skontrolovať.
Okay, so I don't want everybody to answer this
Nechcem, aby
question.
všetci mi odpovedali na túto otázku.
I want only 1/2 people to answer this question. They're together. So this is Sister Charity
Je tu
and Brother Blessing. They are in the
sestra
group. There are
Charity a
participants in here.
brat Blessing.
So I want only them to answer this
Chcem, aby
question
mi oni
if
odpovedali,
they are willing to
ak
do
sú
that.
ochotní.
Okay? So I just need to get them to assent that they are with me and they're listening before
Som
I
sa
ask the
chcel uistiť,
question.
že či
You can just
počúvajú.
say, yes, you're here, you're listening. Good, they're there together. So, Dan and I have been talking, I don't mean like we've had loads of studies, we had a conversation about this
O
subject,
tejto téme.
this issue. So my question
Takže moja
is,
otázka je,
there's this warrior king, this god. His name is Apis.
je tu tento boh,
But Aaron knows
bojovník, jeho meno
when
je
you
Apis.
create the warrior king, he doesn't come
Ale
on his own.
keď prinášate tohto bojového
person.
kráľa, on
When you
neprichádza
create
ako
him,
sám.
He
Keď
comes as a
utvoríte
package
jeho,
deal.
on príde ako v jednom balíku, to sú bohovia.
So this is not a name I'm looking for.
Ja teraz
So
nehľadám tu nejaké
I'm not looking
meno.
for a name. What I am asking, Brother Blessings of
To, čo
Charity,
sa pýtam,
is who comes along with the warrior
kto vlastne
king,
prichádza s týmto
with this
bojovníkom?
bull? Who comes along with him? I'm not looking for a
Nehľadám
name,
meno,
but there's something else that has to attach with him.
je tu niečo
And
iné
who or
ešte.
what is that?
Čo to je?
That's my
To je moja
question.
otázka. Kto to je?
I'm not looking for the Egyptian name. So
Nehľadám teraz to
don't
egyptské meno.
start panicking that you don't know the name of the god. So, this is okay. Good. Never mind, Brother Curtis. Thank you. It's the wrong answer anyway, because that's Apis.
Je to big Apis.
I don't even know how to pronounce it. Tar or something. I don't know. That's Apis. I want to know who comes with
Kto
him.
prichádza s týmto bikom
is-
Apis?
For Brother Blessing, Sister Charity. If you're not sure, don't panic. Just tell me you're not
Nepanikárte, ak
sure.
neviete, ale mi povedzte, že neviete.
Okay, they're thinking. So you got to think back to our communication.
Takže sa vrátime naspäť tej našej komunikácii.
Okay, so the answer is fertility.
Tá odpoveď je plodnosť.
So I'm going to change that
Ja
term,
tento pojem zmením,
fertility,
pojem plodnosť.
because if you've got a warrior
Keď
king,
máte bojovníka kráľa,
what do you need to have fertility?
teraz neviem.
What does the king need?
Čo je taká kľúčová potreba na to, aby ste mohli
Good.
byť plodní?
He needs a woman in his life.
Potrebuje ženu vo svojom živote.
So, I want us to understand the dynamic of what I'm suggesting
Chcem, aby
here.
ste pochopili tú dynamiku, ktorú sa tu snažím
If
ukázať.
you buy Apis,
Ak kúpite tohto
What you
býka
get with
Apis,
him?
tak spolu s ním prichádza aj čo?
you get his
Je
partner
jeho
with him. She comes for
partnerka.
free.
To je zadarmo.
Now, this is a phenomena of
Toto je
idolatry.
fenomén modlárstva.
This is not something that's
Toto nie je
unique.
niečo jedinečné.
When you start having this male god, this warrior
Keď
god,
začnete mať tohto
he can't be on his
mužského
own.
boha,
He'll get
bojovníka,
lonely.
on nie je sám.
He needs to have his desires
On
met.
potrebuje, aby mal naplnené tie
He
svoje
needs to have
túžby.
a partner in his
Potrebuje
life,
mať vo svojom živote partnerku.
especially if he's the god of
Zvlášť, keď je
fertility,
bohom plodnosti.
the god who is we might call it a man's man. You know, all that ugly bravado, all that ugly
To je
someone would call it toxic masculinity. We can use
Všetká ako keby tá zlá
when you get
mužstva,
gods,
mužnosť,
now you've got a man and
tá
a woman.
škaredá, tá bojovná.
Can we see why they're going to rise up to play?
Ale teraz vidíme, že máme
Hopefully we can
muža a
now
ženu.
see what they're
vidíte
doing
teraz, čo robia
is,
Izraeliti, keď oni
in
povstali, aby
essence,
sa hrali.
mimicking
Oni vlastne
this,
napodobňujú,
I don't want to call it idolatrous
nechcem to nazvať
relationship, because it's a
modlársky
godly
vzťah.
relationship between these two gods. They mimic it
Oni
through
napodobňujú tento vzťah týchto
this
bohov.
act, and it's all worship.
Toto všetko je o uctievaní. Oni proste robia to, čo robia tí bohovia. A to patrí k tomu uctievaniu. Alebo to je
I'm hoping we've all got together up to this point.
No, dúfam, že sa zatiaľ chápeme.
Now, what I want us to at least consider, if you don't want to accept
To, čo
this,
chcem, aby sme aspoň
that you
zvážili,
think
ak to nechcete
you are
prijať.
free from
Ak vy si myslíte,
paganism,
že ste slobodní od
nature
pohanstva
worship,
a od takého uctievania
and the
prírody
mystery religion,
a tohto
you think you're
tajomného
free from all of
náboženstva,
that.
ak si myslíte, že
And
máte
I want to
slobodu,
suggest
ja by som chcel
that you're
povedať, že
not.
nemáte.
So can someone give me
Môže mi niekto
a sanitized version, a sanitized model of this form
zdravý
of existence
model
or worship?
tohto uctievania? Teraz nie som si istá, či rozumiem.
Sanitized. The only thing that can sanitize anything is Christianity, by the way, is God. No, sanitized. Sensuality would not be sanitized.
Teraz, že jediné, čo môže byť zdravé, je
Sensuality is
kresťanstvo, to je
anti-Christian.
skutočný Boh.
I want a sanitized version of this. I'll rephrase it, a Christianized
Alebo
one.
aké by bolo
The sensuality would not be a Christianized version. Not the word
kresťanský
SDA.
model tohoto tu.
Okay, so now we're coming up with silly answers. We can't say. I'm not even going to read this one. Richard, you can't do that. That's not right.
Nebudem to ani čítať.
No. Okay, so I'm going to type out the answer.
Ja tu odpoveď napíšem.
So if you didn't come to our class, you're going to miss the answer now. Because I've typed it out. I'm not going to say it. How about that? Everyone who missed out on this
povedať, kto ste
presentation.
sa nezúčastnili, nebudete vedieť odpoveď.
So, I'm suggesting that this is the Christianized, sanitized version of what they are doing here.
Skresťanštená, taká uzdravená
And so I
verzia
want to
toho, čo
say
tu robia.
this idolatrous model
Tento
is
modlársky
alive
model
and
je
well
naživé
right in the midst of
v
Christianity.
kresťanstve.
My question
Moja
is,
otázka je,
this modeling
tento model
of God,
Boha, takáto predstava Boha,
the one God, the one true God, Apis, the true
jediný
God,
skutočný Boh,
when
ten
you
Apis,
create
keď
him,
ho utvoríme,
when you conjure him up, he doesn't come by
on
himself.
neprichádza
He
sám
comes with
za
a
seba,
partner.
on prichádza s partnerom,
The partner
partnerkou.
is
A to
feminine
je žena.
because he's
On
masculine.
je muž,
They come
oni
together.
prichádzajú spolu.
Okay, someone says he's not the true God. I know he's not the
Niekto
true
tu hovorí,
God.
že on nie je
We
pravdivý
have to
Boh.
live
Áno,
in
ja
a
viem, že
parable
nie je, ale
world.
my teraz to
If we
robíme
don't understand the
podobenstvo.
parable,
My nepochopíme to
then we don't
podobenstvo,
understand the
tak
real.
nepochopíme to skutočné.
I'm not saying
Ja
Apis
nehovorím, že
was the
Apis
true
je
God.
skutočný Boh.
I am
Ja
saying
hovorím,
he was the
že on
true
bol
God
skutočný
in his
Boh
representation as the Israelites understood
v tej
him.
reprezentácii, ako to
Elder
Izraeliti
Tess
chápali.
has said explicitly
Staršia
that
Tess
you
veľmi jasne
and I worship the Apis
nám
bull
ukázala, že
today.
uctievame býka Apis ešte dnes.
And if we're worshipping the Apis bull today, what we're actually worshipping is the true
Ale
God.
my neúctievame
but he's
býka
not
Apis, ale
The
my
true God as
uctievame
he really
skutočného
is.
Boha,
He's the true God as represented
ale
by
nie
the
takého,
Apis
aký
bull.
je, ale takého, ako vyzerá býk
So,
Apis.
When you create that
Keď
God,
otvoríte tohto Boha,
what comes
čo
with
s ním
him
prichádza,
is the feminine
je
counterpart.
ženský náprotivok.
So you have male and
Takže máme
female.
muža a ženu.
They have a relationship one with
jeden s
another.
druhým.
You cannot have one
Nemôžeme mať
without
iba
the
jedného
other.
bez toho druhého.
So, Brother Blessing, I'm sure you remember
Určite
that
si pamätáš,
discussion
brat
that
Blessing,
we
keď sme sa
had.
rozprávali.
And the reason why I asked him that
Dôvod,
question
prečo sa na to
was
pýtam,
because it was something that came up in a study that he and I were discussing over. And
nejak to
even though it
prišlo, keď
wasn't
sme sa
about this
rozprávali o jednej
particular
štúdii,
issue,
nebolo to presne o
it
tejto
ties back
téme,
to this very
ale
issue
súvisí to s tým,
about the apis bull.
obykový apis.
And what I want to
To, čo
do
by som chcel spraviť,
is not to just take this as this isolated concept of these
je nebrať
pagan
to
people
ako izolovaný koncept,
have
že toto
this
sú tí pohania,
wicked
ktorí
model
majú celý zlú
of a
predstavu o
male
Bohu,
and a female
o tom, že
God.
je tam Boh, že je tam muž a žena,
What I want us to
Boh
see
ako muž a žena.
that the
Chcem, aby
model
sme
of
videli,
headship
že tento model toho
is that
vodcovstva
same modeling.
mužského
It's just
je ten
been
istý model, len
Christianized,
je to pokresťaštené. Je to
So there you are.
posvetené ako keby.
For those people who weren't here, I said the word headship. I'm saying the
Tento
headship
model
model
vodcovstva muža
is a
je
Christianized version
pokresťanštená
of
verzia
paganism.
pohanstva.
If you want to do it the other
Ak
way
to chcete
round,
urobiť naopak,
because what comes
čo
first,
prichádza prvé?
idolatry or the true
Modlárstvo alebo
God?
skutočný
Who
Boh?
was here
Kto tu bol
first?
prvý?
We all know the answer to that. I'm not even going to wait for an answer. The
My
true
vieme, že
God.
skutočný Boh bol
Everything
prvý.
else
Všetko ostatné
is a
je
copy
len
of Him.
kopia.
I'm not going to call it a
napodobenina.
copy. I'm going to call it a mockery of the
Je to
true.
výsmech tej pravde.
Now, a mockery of the true doesn't make it, please don't give me a correction on this, a mockery of the true doesn't make it less true.
To, že sa niekto vysmieva
I'm not
pravde,
saying the false is true, but what I'm
neznamená,
saying
že to je
is,
menej
if it's
pravda.
modeled upon the true, there
keď
must be some truth in
niekto
it.
modeluje
Otherwise, we'll use
tak v
that
tom
word, the
modeli, keď
falsification of
niekto
the truth.
napodobne pravdu, v tej napodobnení je kus
But if
pravdy.
it's a
Ináč by to
model of
nebola
the truth,
napodobenina
an
pravdy.
image of the truth, a
Ak
copy
je to
of the
obraz
truth,
pravdy,
there has to be truth there.
tak v tom musí byť nejaká pravda.
So where did they get this idea?
Je to
When you
imitácia
create
pravdy, je v
the
tom,
apis god,
je v
you
tom
have to create his
nejaká,
partner. Where did they get that from?
v tom
They
nejaká
got
pravda je.
that from, I'm just
Čiže
going to call it Christianity.
to, že
Christianity doesn't
to, že
exist. It's
prichádza
whatever
Boh so svojou
you want to call the
partnerkou,
church
odkiaľ to
in that
zobrali?
dispensation.
Poviem, že z
They get this
kresťanstva.
from God, from God's kingdom, from God's modeling, from the
Zobrali
church.
to z cirkvi,
Basically,
modelu,
from Adam and
ktorý dal
Eve.
Pán Boh.
So
Adam a
all
Eva.
of this is taken from the Adam
Toto
and Eve
všetko je
model.
zobraté z modelu Adama a Evy.
Now, today,
Dnes,
when we start thinking
keď
about
začneme rozmýšľať
what people would call the mystery
čo
religion
ľudia
or paganism
nazývajú,
or nature worship or this evil stuff that these people are doing, we have to
uctievanie
remember
vidiel,
that they did not
pohanstvo,
invent this.
musíme pamätať na to, že toto oni
They did
nevymysleli.
not get this from, they didn't invent it by themselves. They didn't get it out of thin
Oni
air.
to proste nevymysleli len tak zo vzduchu.
They got this from
Majú to
the true religion.
zo skutočného náboženstva.
So what I want us to
To, čo
see
chcem, aby sme videli,
is that the religion that we
je, že
have,
náboženstvo,
which
ktoré
is
my máme,
connected to men and
ktoré
women,
je spojené s mužmi a ženami,
and the religious practices that we
a
have,
tie rôzne náboženské úkony, ktoré my máme,
is just a
to je
representation,
replika, alebo
or is being represented, I
reprezentované
might say, by these idolatrous religions.
týmito modlárskymi
There's very
náboženstvami.
little
Je
difference
veľmi
between
malý
the
rozdiel
two.
medzi týmito dvoma.
Now, depending on which religion you want to go
To
to,
závisí do ktorého náboženstva
if you want to go
pôjdeme.
to Ashtaroth or Diana,
K Diane alebo Aštarte.
who rules? Who's
Kto
the
tu
boss?
panuje? Kto je pánom?
I'm not sure who iPhone J Buff is, but in that form of
V tejto
idolatry,
forme
the women
modlárstva
rule.
panujú ženy.
But in this form of
Ale v tejto forme
idolatry,
modlárstva,
the apis bull,
ubíka
the men
apis,
rule.
Uh,
It's always people
panujú muži.
vying for power.
To je
But
vždy
what
o
I want
tom,
us to
že kto
see
získa moc.
is the interaction
Ale čo chcem, aby sme
between
videli,
men
je, že je
and
to tu
women.
interakcia medzi mužom a ženou. Alebo mužmi a ženami.
Now this becomes
Toto
significant
je významné,
because you have to
pretože
remember
musíme pamätať
what is the head and what is the
na to,
tail.
čo je hlava a čo je
Where
chvost.
do things come
Odkiaľ
from
veci prídu
and where do things end
a kde
up?
skončia.
So there is the true
Takže
God,
je skutočný Boh
and He creates Adam and Eve, man and
a on
woman, male and
tvorí
female,
Adama
in
a
His
Evu
image.
na svoj obraz.
So the question you want to ask yourself, what is God?
Otázka, ktorú sa chceme spýtať,
God a man?
je, čo je Boh?
Or is
Kým
God
je
a
Boh?
woman?
On je ženou alebo
Or is
mužom?
God half a man and
Je
half a
napoli-
woman, or is He both? What is God?
Napoli žena, napoli
Man or
muž?
woman?
Kým je Boh?
I'm not asking for any answers, so please don't answer my question.
Neodpovedajte
This is
mi
a
na
rhetorical
otázku.
question.
To je iba retorická otázka.
In the
V
parable,
podobenstve
we know the answer.
poznáme tú odpoveď.
In the parable, it's Adam and
V
Eve.
podobenstve je to Adam a Eva.
So in the parabolic, in the natural, it's two human beings,
V tom
male and
prirodzenom
female.
sú to dve ľudské
They join
bytosti.
together and become one
Muž a
flesh,
žena, ktorí sa stanú
which
jedným
is a
telom.
representation of
To je
God.
reprezentácia Boha.
I don't want to go into the details of what that means or what it looks
Nechcem
like or what it's
teraz ísť
supposed
do
to portray.
detailov, čo to znamená.
But what I do want to
Ale
say
chcem
is when
povedať,
it comes to
že keď
idolatry,
prídeme k modlárstvu,
where did those idolatrous practices
odkiaľ
come
pochádzajú tieto
from?
modlárske
How were they
praktiky? Ako to oni
invented?
vymysleli?
And I want to say they were
Ja by
invented
som
or
chcel
modeled
povedať,
based
že to
upon
na základe
humanity.
modelu ľudskosti, ľudstva.
If you go to passages such as Isaiah
Keď sa
46 that
pozrieme
we've
na
already mentioned,
Izaiáša
they
46,
create these idols
utvoria,
in whose image?
oni utvoria modly na koho obraz?
They essentially create them in the image of humanity, or as
je to v
people have
obraze
said, in their
toho
own image.
ľudstva, na ten ich vlastný
And
obraz.
if you're going to create idols in your own
Keď
image,
tvoríme modly na náš
what
vlastný
what
obraz,
kind of idols will you be forced to have? If you're going to create them in your own
aký budeme
image,
musieť mať
what kind of
modly?
idols will you have? Anybody? Good. You'll have, it's not just ones that look like ourselves,
Nie len
not
modly,
just
ktoré budú
man-like.
vyzerať ako
Genesis
my.
1:27, Brother Tom has given us. You'll have
Budeme mať
male
muža
and
a ženu.
female. Good. You'll have a male and female God. You have to do
Toto
that
musíte.
because these idolatrous models are based upon
pretože tieto
humanity.
modlárske
You go to
modely sú
Romans
založené
chapter
na
1, Paul discusses this.
ľudskosti.
So that's why you have all this male and female
Prečo tu máme
modeling.
tento model muža a
Now,
ženy?
we can talk about the male and female, but we can look at it from
Môžeme
another
sa na to pozrieť aj z
perspective.
inej
We can
perspektívy.
look upon it as the sun
Môžeme
God.
sa na to pozrieť
All the different religions have their own names.
ako na
So if the sun God is the premier powerful
ten
God,
boha slnka,
which
to je
would
ten
be
hlavný
the man,
mocný boh, muž.
what would his
Čo
counterpart
bude
be?
jeho náprotivok?
The sun is the man. What's the counterpart?
Keď
Good.
slnko
The
je
moon. The moon woman.
muž,
Excellent. So
tak
you've got the sun and the
ten
moon,
jeho náprotivok
and you can
je,
begin to see how ugly all of this looks.
je slnko, to bude žena.
You go
nie
to
slnko,
Revelation
mesiac.
12.
Začnete
What
vidieť,
modeling
ako
is
to
that?
vyzerá celé škaredo, keď pôjdete do zjavenia 12.
What modeling is
Jaký tam
being
je
used
model?
there? What's the woman standing
Tá
on?
žena na čom stojí?
Revelation 12. What's the woman
Na
standing
čom
on?
stojí tá žena?
The
V zjavení
moon.
12. Na mesiaci.
Why would a woman stand on the
Prečo stojí
moon?
na mesiaci?
We all can begin to see the problem now.
ten problém.
Much of inspiration.
Mnoho z
Remember,
inšpirácie.
the book of Revelation,
Kniha Zjavenie.
this is not a study on
To nie
Revelation
je
12. I'm
štúdium
not
na
trying to look
Zjavenie
at all
12,
the
o tom teraz
symbology.
nerozprávam o tých
There's
symboloch.
good symbology
To je
there.
dobrá
But I want us to
symbolika.
see what the modeling
chcem,
is
aby ste
about.
videli
This
ten
is the
model.
last book. This is the most refined, the most modern book in the Bible, the book of Revelation, 100 AD-ish. And look what the modeling has. It has women standing on moons because they're a reflection of whom?
Je odrazom koho?
Of men. They're the
Muža.
lesser
Oni
light.
sú tým menším svetlom.
If you're a lesser light, what does that
Ak
make
ste
you?
menším svetlom, čo to z vás robí?
lesser.
Menej, ste niečím menej.
How ugly is that?
Aké je to škaredé.
How ugly is it if you want to tell women that they're
Keď chcete
lesser
povedať
than
ženám,
men
že sú menej
because they're
ako
just a
muži,
reflection
pretože sú
of
oni
the
len
sun?
odrazom toho slnka.
Inferior, unequal,
Sú nerovné,
less important.
podriadené.
All of this
Všetko toto.
imagery
Celý tento
is
obraz,
all the same imagery that pagan religions
toto je
have taken on board.
presný model a obrazy,
And
ktoré si
I want
berú
to say
pohanské
they didn't invent
náboženstva.
it.
A ja len chcem
So
povedať,
before we
že toto
start
oni
slapping these
nevymysleli.
people around saying they're
Chcete ich
pagan
začať
or they got
odsudzovať, že
mystery
to sú
religion
pohania,
and we are
a my sme
clean,
čistí,
I want to remind us
pripomenúť,
that they got
že
all
oni
of
toto
that
všetko
from
majú od
us.
nás.
And what did they get from us?
Čo od nás majú?
That women are less
Že ženy
important than
sú
men.
menej dôležité ako muži.
They don't have their own glory.
Nemajú svoju vlastnú
They
slávu.
stand in the shadow of men.
Oni stoja len v
They're
tieni
just a
muža. Oni
reflection
sú len
of what
odrazom.
men are. In
toho,
fact,
kým
if a
muž je.
woman is going to be
Ak
glorious,
žena bude
who's the only person that
slávna
can make a woman
alebo
glorious?
krásna, kto je ten, kto ju môže spraviť
They
naozaj
can't be glorious in their own
slávnou?
right, can they?
Ona
A
nemá
man
slávu
can only
sama v
do
sebe.
that.
Len
Can we
muž.
begin to see how... No, not Jesus. I can't accept Jesus as the correct
Nie,
answer, Brother
Pán
Richard.
Ježiš nie
It's
je
not
správna
Jesus.
odpoveď.
It's
Je to
man.
muž,
Sister Daisy,
Daisy.
a guy.
chlapec.
Good. They can only
Len-
get their self-worth,
Len
their
tam môžu
glory
nájsť
from a
skutočnú
man.
hodnotu u muža.
All of this idolatrous imagery that we
Toto je
have here
modlársky
is all
obraz,
borrowed from the model that I called headship, the
ktorý my
headship
tu
model.
máme, obraz pohanstva, a on je prevzatý
Sexism.
vlastne z modelu toho vodcovstva muža. To je sexizmus.
If you can begin to
Ak
see
môžete vidieť
the significance and the depth of the
hĺbku a
Apis
význam
bull problem,
problému bikápis,
it goes far
ide to
beyond
oveľa ďalej,
toxic
Za to,
masculinity.
čo je
That
len
you
taká
have
toxická
men
mužnosť,
who have
tá
this
škaredá
bad
mužnosť,
image
bojovná,
that we all have idolatry in some shape or
že
form in
všetci
our
máme
lives.
modlárstvo v nejakej forme v našom živote.
It's quite
Je
specific.
to tu dosť špecifické.
And what it's relating to,
To, čoho sa
with
to
respect
týka,
to this particular study,
pri tejto
that
štúdii,
I want us to
čo
understand,
ja chcem, aby
is
sme
the model
pochopili,
of headship
je, a čo je za tým
and how it has
vodcovstvom.
impacted.
A ako to malo,
We'll
aký
just
to
go
malo
with this
dopad,
movement because they're the really, it's us that we're really interested in. So what I want us to
to, čo chcem, aby
understand
sme chápali,
is that this Apis bull
je, že tento
subject
big
or study
apis
takes us to the model of
nás berie
headship,
do modelu
which takes us to the
vodcovstva.
subject of equality.
A to nás berie
And
do témy
the
rovnosti.
idolatry, or as Elder Tess might call it, apostate Protestantism,
To
that
modlárstvo,
people in the movement
ako to
have bought into, that they already had way before they even joined the movement, this lifestyle that we all
životný
led
štýl, ktorý sme všetci
is all
prijali,
connected to this subject of,
to je všetko prepojené s touto témou,
which is represented by the Apis
ktorá je
bull model.
reprezentovaná modelom byka apis.
So I want us to all understand
Chcem,
that,
aby sme toto
and it's
chápali. Je
significant.
to lebo je to významné. Aký to má význam.
So this was an introductory
Toto bol
thought
taký
to
úvod
perhaps some, maybe just one or two
niekoľkým
questions that
otázkam,
relate to this subject
ktoré sa
of
týkajú tejto
how
témy.
men and
O tom,
women and their
ako ženy a
relationship one
muži,
with another
ich vzťahy,
interact together
aké majú medzi
to
sebou
create
interakciu,
family
keď
units,
utvoria rodinu.
and how family units are constructed and how they
Ako tá
operate
rodinná
and work
jednotka
together.
je skonštruovaná a ako fungujú.
So the Apis bull study
Štúdia byka
isn't
apis
just we're taking on right-wing conservative
nie je len
apostate
to, že my sme na
Protestantism.
seba zobrali
This is
nejaký
not
pravičiarsky konzervatívny
that we,
protestantizmus.
We understand this idea that it's ruled by strong white male
Toto nie je len
figureheads.
o tom, že my teraz pochopíme,
It's
že,
much more than that.
že
This
to
is the
vodcovstvo je
idea
o bielých
that
silných
headship
mužoch, ktorí vedú.
is an
Toto je
appropriate
o
way
tom,
to
že
have society function.
to
An appropriate
vodcovstvo
way to have family
správny spôsob,
ordered and
myslenie
structured.
toho, že je to správny spôsob toho, ako
And
viesť
what I want
rodinu a
us to see
spoločnosť. A
is
to, čo chcem, aby
whether or
sme
not
videli,
you assent to
či
this
s tým
or
súhlasíme
not,
alebo nie,
many of
mnohí
us,
z nás,
far too many
príliš
of
mnohí
us,
z nás,
have not eradicated
nevykorenili
this headship
tento
model.
model
I want to call it this
vodcovstva.
idolatrous model, this wrong
Je to
model.
model modlárstva, je to nesprávny
I'm not
model.
saying we got it from idolatry. I'm saying
Ja
the
nehovorím, že
idolatrous
my to máme
religions
z
got it from
modlárstva,
us.
vravím, že oni to majú od
And
nás.
if they got it from us, we can see that whatever,
A
if you want to learn something about the
ak sa chceme
headship
niečo
model,
naučiť o tomto modele
you can learn it
vodcovstva,
straight from this
môžeme sa to
idolatrous
naučiť
practice.
kľudne od tých
And
modlárov.
they can learn it straight from
Oni
us.
to majú od nás.
So it's a symbiotic relationship between
Symbiotický
them and
vzťah
us.
medzi nimi a
They can learn
nami.
from us and we can learn from them.
Môžeme sa
You
od seba
can
učiť
have the
navzájom.
counterfeit teach you the truth.
Môže nás aj
We
napodobeniť,
know
aj
that.
naučiť o pravde.
That's why the
Toto
story
vieme.
or the
Preto
study
tá štúdia
of Fatima
o Fatime
is so
je veľmi
important,
dôležitá.
even though that study has remained static for some time.
Aj keď
to be
na nejaký čas
resurrected,
teraz tá štúdia ostala
Lord willing.
statická, ale
The
bude
reason why it's so
vzkriesená.
important is because the counterfeit can teach you about the truth.
Napodobení na nás môže
In fact,
naučiť
we
o
know
pravde.
that because the
Toto
subject or the
vieme.
stories of the King of the North, the King of the South, how they war, how they react one with another,
Vieme o tom
can
z
teach us
príbehu
about our
kráľa
own,
severu a juhu, o tom, ako medzi
our
sebou
own behavior,
fungujú.
our own necessary conduct, the way we should conduct ourselves. So we know that the Force can
Vieme,
enlighten
že to
us upon how
nepravdivé
the truth should work.
nám ukazuje o tom, ako by malo
So what I
fungovať
want
to
us to
pravdivé.
see is that this model of
Tento
headship
model vodcovstva
or
alebo
inequality or
nerovnosti,
sexism
sexizmu
is the same
je ten
issue
istý
that's
problém,
been addressed
o ktorom sa
here
hovorí
in the
tu
Apis Bull
Bíkovi
study.
Apis v tomto štúdiu.
And so whether or not we start talking about dowry
Takže či začneme hovoriť o
or headship
vodcovstve, o
or any of the
darovaní
other
vena,
spin-off
čomkoľvek
concepts
inom,
or models that are brought to view based upon this
iných
perspective,
modeloch,
all of this
ktoré sú z tejto
is
perspektívy,
brought forth from the worship
toto všetko
of the Apis
vychádza z
bull.
uctievania Bíka Apis.
And after
Po
today,
dnešku,
after this introductory
po tomto
study, if I can
úvode,
say it
ak
that
to tak
way,
môžem povedať,
I'm hoping that you can all see
dúfam, že môžete
that the
vidieť,
Apis bull
že Bík Apis
is alive and well,
je stále nažive.
if not in all of us, in many of us.
Mnohých z nás, ak nie vo
Because
všetkých
in that
nás.
history, it wasn't just the men that were playing
Pretože v
around.
tých
It was
dejinách
the
to
women.
neboli iba muži, ktorí
The
sa
men and the
hrali.
women were doing this
Boli to muži a
together.
ženy, ktorí to
They
robili
were
spolu.
in concert. They
Bol-
were
bol
in
to ako
cohort,
spoločný
one with
koncert.
another. Therefore, you
Zjednotenie sa.
know that the problems with our
Vieme, že
relationships,
problémy
one with another, men and
v
women,
našich vzťahoch medzi mužmi a ženami
is equally problematic between the men and the
je
women.
rovnako
And I don't mean to
problematický.
say that they're equally
Ja
guilty,
nehovorím, že sú rovnako
Not the point I
vinní,
wanna make.
to ja nechcem teraz
but
hovoriť,
what I want us to
ale
see
chcem, aby sme
that
videli,
we have to be
že
careful,
musíme byť
all of
opatrní
us,
všetci,
that we don't buy into these ideas, these
na to, aby sme
models
neprijali tieto modely,
that are reflected in idolatrous
ktoré
practices.
vidno v týchto modlárskych praktikách.
So, for those of us who said
Takže tí,
that this is nature
ktorí
worship
povedali,
or
že to je
paganism
pohanstvo, uctievanie prírody,
or the mystery religion,
tajomné
I want us to hopefully
tajomstvo
see
neprávosti.
that what we're
Chcem,
actually
aby ste
discussing
videli, že to, o čom
is
hovoríme,
conservative
je
Adventism,
konzervatívny adventizmus.
the type of
Typ
Christianity that
kresťanstva,
you and I
kde vy a ja,
are both practicing
ktoré my
and
praktikujeme
engaging in
a sme v ňom
in our
zapletení
day-to-day
v
practices.
každodenných praktikách.
If you
Ak si
remember,
pamätáte
just from that simple
z tohto
diagram,
diagramu,
there's going to take a man that comes out from the east, a person who comes from a distant land, that's going to do two
je
things.
tam
That's going to
človek,
take his people
ktorý príde
out
od východu
of captivity
z ďalekej
and
zeme
we're going to destroy the captor,
a
destroy
vyvedie Božiu ľud
Babylon,
zo
destroy
zajatia
Egypt.
a zničí
We had these two
Babylon.
histories there. It's going to happen the third time, and if you're
Máme tam
familiar
tie
with the
dve
studies that
dejiny.
I've done on this subject, we know that
Stane
these
sa to aj
two men,
tretíkrát.
Cyrus, the anointed
Vieme, že
one,
to bol Cyrus,
and
ten pomazaný,
Moses, who was faithful in his
tiež
house,
Mojžiš,
are all
ktorý bol
symbols or
verný vo svojom
representations
dome.
of Jesus.
Oni sú symbolom na Ježiša,
And
alebo
what that's
reprezentujú
telling
Ježiša.
us
To,
is
čo nám
that
to hovorí,
you and
je, že
I
vy a ja
are practicing this apis-bull
praktikujeme
religion
náboženstvo byka
in our
apis
relationships one with
v našich
another.
vzťahoch.
The perspective that men have of women and women have of
Perspektíva,
men,
ktorú majú
by
muži
and
o ženách
large,
a ženy o
is
mužoch,
warped, distorted, and wrong.
je úplne zlá.
So we can call it
Môžeme to nazvať
apostate
odpadný
Protestantism.
protestantizmus.
And you and I think, well, we separated from that last September
A vy si možno
when we
myslíte,
cut
že
off
minulý
ties with
september ste sa od toho
FFA, when
oddelili,
we understood
keď sme sa
the role
rozdelili z
of
FFA,
the Trump
keď sme
presidency in
pochopili
prophetic history.
rolu Trumpa v
You might
prorockých
think
dejinách.
that now we've got
Možno si myslíte,
2 women elders in the movement,
že teraz máme
and
dvoch
counting,
vodcov v hnutí,
that we have arrived, that we've got
a
many
že
women
sme na
who are in
správnej
leadership
strane,
positions.
že u nás
Everything is
ženy
good.
vedú.
What I want us to
Ale chcem, aby
see
ste videli,
things are not good.
že nie sme na
This
tom
movement
dobre.
is not in a good place.
Nie sme v dobrom stave.
That sexism
Sexizmus
runs deep
ide hlboko
at far too many
na
levels.
mnohých úrovniach.
We have men in our
Sú muži v
movement,
našom hnutí,
husbands,
manželia,
brothers,
bratia,
uncles,
ujovia,
whatever you want to call them,
akokoľvek ich chcete
whatever
nazvať,
familial relationship title you want to give them, in far too many ways,
príliš
they are still dictating and
mnohými
controlling the
spôsobmi
lives of the
stále
women
ovládajú a diktujú
with whom they
životy
interact,
ženám, ktoré sú
women who are in
okolo
their
nich.
lives. I see it far too
Vidím to
often
príliš často
in the movement
hnutí.
how
Ako
men,
muži,
sometimes in a gross
niekedy
fashion,
škaredým
sometimes
spôsobom,
subtly,
niekedy
still
neviditeľne
control and manipulate
ovládajú a manipulujú
the conduct, the activities, the freedoms
slobodu
of
alebo
the women
aktivitu
in their
žien vo
families,
svojich
whether it's
rodinách,
their
či sú
sisters,
to sestry,
mothers,
matky,
wives, or
manželky,
daughters.
dcery.
And those practices
Tieto
then spill over
praktiky
into the movement.
Sa stále dejú v hnutí.
We have men who think they
Sú
have
to
a right
muži, ktorí
to
si myslia, že majú
interrogate
právo
or view the female people in their homes,
na to, aby dohliadali na
their
ženy vo
phone
svojom
activity.
dome. Na to,
That they think they have a right to access their private data, their private information,
aby
to control how
videli,
money is
ako
used
používajú
in their
peniaze,
homes,
s kým si
in a way that they would
dopisujú
never allow their spouses to have,
takým
their wives
spôsobom,
or the
že by
females
oni
in their
nikdy
family,
nedovolili,
they would never
aby
allow them to
rovnaký
have that level of
dohľad
control over them.
mali tie ženy nad tým, čo robia oni.
Now I know many people
Poznám mnoho ľudí,
have good intentions on this issue.
ktorí majú v tomto
But I want
dobré
to give one
zámery,
example in the
ale chcem
movement
dať jeden príklad,
that has, I think, exemplified this problematic issue that
ktorý
we
je
have.
takým ako keby príkladom tohoto problému, ktorý
A few
máme.
years ago,
Pred pár
when we were
rokmi,
setting up organizations in
keď
the
začínala
movement,
organizácia,
we had secretaries and
mali sme
presidents, etc.
sekretárov, prezidentov,
And no one blinked an eye when they were all men. Everything was all fine,
to
everything
boli
was all
sami
good.
muži, nikomu to nevadilo.
But now it's come to the consciousness
A
of
teraz
this movement
toto hnutie si
that
uvedomilo, že
modeling
tento
can no
model
longer continue,
už nemôže ďalej takto
that we
ísť,
have to have women in leadership positions.
že musia
You
byť
will
ženy vo
notice,
vedení.
I've noticed this, a phenomena
A ja
has
som si
arisen.
všimol taký
What has
fenomén.
happened now that we've had women in leadership
Čo sa stalo
positions?
teraz,
When you look
keď
at
ženy sú
organizational
vedúce?
structures in our
Keď sa
movement,
pozrieme na tú
what have you begun
organizačnú
to
štruktúru,
notice? Maybe someone can type out an answer. Maybe you have noticed what I've noticed.
všimli ste si to, čo aj ja? Môžete to napísať.
Resistance, yes, not that. Jealousy, yes, not that.
Áno, je to aj odpor, aj závisť, ale nemám toto na mysli.
It's subtle.
Je to niečo veľmi neviditeľné, také
Resistance
tiché.
is not subtle. Jealousy is not subtle. I'll type out the answer.
Napíšem odpoveď.
Lots of disagreements, yes. So I want to suggest one of the spin-offs from having leaders in women in leadership positions is that everywhere now we want to have
z tých takých vecí, ktoré sa deje, že zrazu všade chcú mať ľudia spoluvládu.
The reason they didn't say, sorry, it went private. Someone linked me onto private. Someone shifted me. Who did that? Co-chairs. We seem to have a lot of co-chairs in our movement nowadays, and to me, that seems to be a consequence of having women leaders. So you put women in leadership positions, and straight away everybody wants to have co-chairs. Why is that? Why do you want to have co-chairs? People don't know what a co-chair is. A co-chair is a chair is someone who has a chair. We wouldn't call it a chair, we would call it a throne. So a throne is a ruler, someone who sits on a chair rules.
Má niečo na starosti.
So co-leadership, good, we have co-leadership. A partnership.
A tí muži chcú mať to spoluvedenie, oni budú spolu s nimi sedieť na tom tróne.
As soon as we have women in leadership positions, we seem to have this prevalence that if you have a woman leader, we should put a chair in there.
Zrazu je tu taký pocit, že treba, aby tam bol tam aj muž vedľa nej a budú vládnuť spolu a bude ju držať za ruku a pomôže, lebo ona nevie, čo má robiť. Toto všetko je teológia Bika Apis.
So if you have women in leadership positions
vo vedúcich
and you're trying to get co-leaders in there,
im tam dať
whatever justification you want to give for that,
akokoľvek to chcete ospravedlniť,
I'm saying this is Apis Bull theology. Because when you had men leaders there, there was no arguing
nikto by nepovedal, že treba mu pomôcť, dajme mu tam niekoho vedľa neho, aby mohli spoluvládnuť, aby im pomohol vykonávať tú svoju prácu. Keby tam sedel muž, nikoho toto nenapadne.
Another phenomenon that happens so often,
ďalší fenomén, ktorý sa deje veľmi často,
many of our male leaders
z našich vodcov
are
mužských
failing in their job. Is that too hard a saying, my brothers? It's true, unfortunately. Many of our male leaders are failing.
Mnohí z mužov zlyhávajú.
I'm going to blame Elder Tess on this one.
Teraz za toto obviním sestru Tess, staršiu Tess.
Because she's not here to defend herself.
Tu nemôže sa brániť.
Elder Tess will tell men, those male leaders,
ona povie mužom, vodcom,
in straight, unvarnished language, that they are incompetent. She often says it a lot nicer than that.
Ako toto.
So, when you tell all these male leaders they're incompetent, do you know what they want to do?
Viete, čo chcú spraviť?
That they don't want to smile. They don't want to smile. When you tell them they're incompetent, what they end up doing is say, well, I'll tell you what, I'll step down and we'll put a woman in my place. So this is another technique, another consequence of the Apis Bull theology. You tell men off for doing a bad job, they say, well, okay, I'll step down, false humility.
Tak on spraví falošnú pokoru a povie, ja odstúpim, dajte tam ženu.
Thrown in the tower. This is false humility. Passive, aggressive control. I like that. That's exactly what it is. Yes. I don't fully understand what that means, but it sounds good. Passive, aggressive control. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. They want to step back and say, okay, let the women have a go. And the reason they do that is because they want the women to fall on their face and fail. All of this is Apis Bull theology. It's all headship, sexism, inequality. So I want us to see, and I'm hoping that all of our male leaders don't all go into a depression now and a half and a moan and saying, oh, they're all failures or whatever.
Z toho, že zlyhávajú.
If you identify yourself as that, improve. Don't say you're going to leave and say, I'll leave, I'll get a woman to do a better job than me. That's not what I want to, that's not why I even mentioned this. I'm giving examples of what I wanted to help us to see was not the whole of the Apis Bull study. Elder Tess has had her own perspective, her own study on what she wanted to derive from that subject. This is only a part of that. It's a perspective that I wanted us to see.
Ja som chcela, aby sme videli tú druhú perspektívu. Dal som niekoľko príkladov toho, kde v našom hnutí zlyhávame.
We should have competent male leaders who implement equality correctly. But if they're not doing it properly and it gets identified, for them to say, well, I'll step back
to nie je dobré,
že teraz povedia,
ja budem pokorný a odstúpim a nech to robí niekto iný.
That is not the response
Toto nie je odpoveď
of true leadership.
Skutočného vodcu.
If I can call
to
it
môžem tak nazvať.
I'll just call it true leadership. This is falling into this same trap. Well, if I can't do it, get a woman to fail instead of me. There's no denying
taká pasca povedať, že keď mne to nejde, nech to robí žena a nech teda ona padne v tom.
There's no denying that the work ahead of us, even in the present, is difficult.
Aj tá, ktorú máme teraz, je ťažká. Ja to nepopieram.
Trying to castigate or ridicule our male leaders.
Nesnažím sa nikoho teraz zhodiť. Ani mužských vodcov, ktorých máme.
All of us are coming into this issue
k tejto téme
from a very difficult upbringing, a very difficult background.
Máme za sebou veľmi
all of us are, whether we're male or female.
Zložitú výchovu, zložité pozadie. Či sme muž alebo žena.
If you're not doing well in your ministry and it gets identified,
ak nekonáte dobre to, čo máte, a identifikuje sa to, a ste vodcom,
is one of the most gentle and nicest people. She does it really well. No one ever gets told off.
Ona to hovorí naozaj dobrým spôsobom.
That your work is being critiqued.
Ale ak máte pocit, že vaša práca je kritizovaná,
don't take the position of saying, well, I'll walk away and let someone else do that job.
K tomu tak, že no tak dobre, ja to robiť nebudem, nech to robí niekto iný.
And what we're not trying to do is get rid of men and replace them with women.
Tá práca nie je jednoduchá. My sa nesnažíme teraz zbaviť mužov a nahradiť ich ženami. Ale toto všetko je súčasťou takého modlárskeho modelu, ktorého by sme nemali, do ktorého by sme nemali vstupovať. Rovnosť nie je jednoduchá, aby sme s ňou pracovali, aby sme ju praktikovali aj na organizačnej úrovni alebo v našich rodinách, a v priateľstvách, ako bratia, synovia, ujovia. Všetky tieto vzťahy nie sú jednoduché.
Are not easy to engage with and to implement properly when it comes to equality and sexism.
Vlastne správne, keď príde na rovnosť.
I'm hoping that today's introductory thoughts
dúfam, že dnešné otázky ohľadne Bika Apis
been food for thought for you.
Alebo tieto myšlienky boli pre vás plodné.
Felt that because you were not swept away with the FFA,
ale ak si myslíte, že neboli ste zmetení odpadnutím FFA,
an elder test correctly identified even today that they had held on to apostate Protestantism.
Staršia test správne identifikuje, že oni sa držia odpadlého protestantizmu. Ak si myslíte, že ste tomu ušli,
succeeded in some shape or form, I want you to know
a že ste už uspeli nejako, chcem, aby ste vedeli,
not only in danger,
že všetci sme v nebezpečí,
like there's some threat to come upon us, we're already still entrenched, many of us, in the same idolatrous practice.
V modlárstve.
And whilst Elder Tess may not have been focusing upon this particular aspect,
na tento konkrétny aspekt,
that's what I wanted us to pick up in this study of family relationships. Now I've identified, I've spoken about organizational issues.
Hovorili sme o organizácii.
I really want us to see how this impinges and impacts upon the way our families are ordered, how our relationships work. Whether you're married, whether you're courting, whether you have children, whether you have parents, whatever familial relationships you have, this impacts all of that, whether you're male or female.
Má to obrovský
So
dopad.
next week,
či sme muž alebo žena.
I want to use this idea that we've spoken about
Chcem použiť túto myšlienku, o ktorej sme hovorili,
some of the dilemmas, some of the problems that confront us today as we deal we try to answer some of the problems that families are being faced with, families in this movement, and how we should deal with some of these issues. And as always, I think we might have some surprises in store for us.
Možno čakajú na nás aj nejaké prekvapenia. Poďme sa pomodliť.
Our Heavenly Father,
nebeský Oče,
Lord, I normally ask thanks for your goodness and mercy towards us.
A ďakujem za
But today,
tvoju
Lord,
milosť.
I kneel before you
Kláňam sa pred Tebou
on behalf of myself and my other brothers and sisters
prosím za seba aj za bratov a sestry,
seek for forgiveness.
aby sme hľadali odpustenie.
Lord, each of us started this journey
My sme začali túto
in a
cestu
worse place than we are
v
today.
tom najhoršom mieste, ako sme
And
boli
yet when
teraz.
we look upon
Ale
ourselves,
keď sa pozrieme sami na seba,
when we're
s čím
confronted
sme konfrontovaní
with this idolatrous theology,
s touto teológiou modlárstva,
in the words of Elder Tess, the Apis
v
bull,
slovách staršej
and we
Tess,
see
že je to
how
Big
this
Apis.
ideology,
Keď vidíme, ako táto
these practices
ideológia
are impinging upon us at this very moment,
ešte stále na nás má dopad,
that these thoughts and ideas are affecting our
má to
relationships,
dopad na naše
and that
vzťahy,
we are not only immune from
nielen,
them,
že nie
but
sme
we have not
imunitní,
even desire to
my
escape
ani
from them.
netužíme z toho uniknúť.
We want to, Lord, ask for your
Prosíme
forgiveness.
ťa o odpustenie.
We want to ask, Father, that you help us.
Prosíme ťa, aby si nám pomohol,
Lord, whether we're female
či sme
or male,
muž alebo
but
žena,
particularly if we're male,
ale zvlášť,
help us
keď
to
sme muž,
consider how
prosím,
we
pomôž
treat
nám zvážiť, ako
the
sa
women in
chováme
our
k ženám
lives.
v našom živote.
how we subtly control and manipulate them,
Ako ich tak potajme,
today,
ovládame a manipulujeme
under the cloak
pod takým rúškom
of what we might
toho,
call
čo by sme mohli nazývať
equality,
rovnosť.
or offering them a helping hand.
Alebo im ponúkame
Father, please be
pomocnú
with us
ruku.
and open our
Pane,
eyes.
prosím, ostan s nami, otvor
We
naše
want to
oči.
thank you for your goodness and mercy
Ďakujeme Ti
towards
za
us.
Tvoju dobrotu a milosť.
And whatever position we hold
Kdekoľvek
within this
sme
movement,
teraz v tomto
I
hnutí,
want to offer a
akúkoľvek
special
pozíciu
blessing
máme,
to those people,
prosíme
particularly
ťa
to those in
za
leadership positions.
požehnanie, zvlášť pre tých, ktorí
Father,
sú
I
vo
pray
vedúcich
particularly for our sisters
pozíciách.
in leadership positions, that those people who are supposed to look up to them
Pretože ľudia, ako ním vzhliadajú,
are the flocks of
sú,
those female leaders, that they will recognize
sú takými
the
ovečkami týchto
difficult
vodcov
work that
ženských. Prosím,
each of them is confronted with,
aby oni
both on a
videli
personal and an organizational level.
to
Father, I want to
bremeno,
pray for all
ktoré ich
the
konfrontuje
brothers who are in
na
leadership
osobnej
positions.
organizačnej úrovni.
Help them, Lord, to really examine
Prosím,
how they conduct themselves, how they
pomôž im,
interact
aby
with
naozaj
both their
skúmali,
fellow
ako
female leaders
pozerajú
and
na seba,
those leaders that
aj na tých vodcov
are above them,
ženských, aj
and
na tých,
also
ktorí
the
sú nad
sisters
nimi,
who are beneath them in an organizational capacity.
na svoje sestry v
Lord, may
organizácii.
each of us
Nech každý z
understand
nás
how
rozumie,
headship
ako vodcovstvo muža
how headship continues to shape
naďalej
and mold
formuje
our
našu
theology
teológiu.
and the way we bring up our
To,
families
ako vedieme naše
and
rodiny
how we interact with one
a
another.
máme medzi
as brethren and
sebou
sisters.
interakciu.
Please guide us and direct us,
Prosíme, ved
Father,
nás
on an
a
individual and a
usmerňuj.
corporate level. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
V mene Ježiša. Amen.